Namaste and welcome to Satsang this morning. Okay, so today I wanted to finish reading from my book Transcending the Mind. So this will be part 3, third and final part, and parts 1 and 2 are already available on YouTube. And just to briefly summarize before we begin with this book, it was really clear to me when I was working with the patterns that were coming up within my own self to transcend, that there were various stages of those undoings. You know, at each stage, our noisy mind is held together by a certain set of assumptions that we have never really questioned as human beings, that the whole of society takes for granted. And questioning these assumptions, or even becoming aware of what they are and that they're not true, will begin to unravel this tangle of thoughts that come from these false assumptions. Our whole mind, our noisy, dysfunctional mind, is made up, generated of thoughts and the resulting emotions and experiences based on these assumptions. So the first ones we've already looked at in the previous sections, namely that I can change my outside world to make myself feel better, or to make it look more like I want. And of course that depends on the assumption that I am someone that can do something, that I'm doing something. And then we've looked at ways that we habitually deal with emotions and thoughts, ideas about being able to push these emotions away, that's an effective way to deal with them, and questioning that and really sort of looking at, is that working? And looking at thoughts and assumptions that we have in our mind based on what we've brought into this lifetime from previous incarnations, previous bodies that have come and gone within you. So there may be assumptions in there that you're not good enough, that you're not safe, that you're not, that life isn't fair, that I can't get what I want. All these assumptions are playing out in our everyday experiences. All of our past life karma is playing out in this lifetime as the challenges and issues we're having right now in our life. And so there are 3 stages left. We're really just sort of breaking down the mind and really looking at taking it apart, as it says, some disassembly required. Certainly was for me when I was working through my own patterns. So we're on to now stage 5, which is the belief in separation. And for anyone that has the book, this is chapter 9. So I'm going to read, there are 2-3 sections left, so whenever we get to the end of that, I will open it up for questions after. So stage 5 is the belief in separation. Before we begin this stage, let us remember once again that each time we are ready to move to the next stage of transcending the mind, we'll notice the same mind pattern coming back. It will appear just as it was before, and it may seem as if we've not ever made any progress. So if an emotion is coming back and our experience has started to happen again that hasn't happened in a while, if we're holding this as a negative thing, this is something that everyone does, I did too. Why is this thing back? Why? I thought I'd got rid of it last time. Why isn't this working? When really we've peeled back enough layers of the mind that now it's presenting its next assumption wrapped up in the form of this mind pattern and this experience, so that we can begin to undo one stage closer to being free of it completely. So it's really important to hold it in the right energy when something comes up. Of course, you're not going to want to have that experience again. And of course, you're not going to want to feel that emotion again and have those nonsensical, noisy thoughts going around. But if you can see it's a sign of your progress rather than a sign of your failure, and I hope you can see that there's going to be a completely different outcome to the work you do with this pattern based on that attitude. But this is happening because I'm succeeding. And I can't say that enough times, because it really, if I'm sure that something happening is evidence of my failure, then I've got to keep having that same evidence of my failure show up again and again and again. Okay. We must remain watchful of thoughts that try to stop us progressing at each stage. These thoughts may be obvious, such as, there's no point doing all of this. Or they may be more subtle, such as, you've put all this work into transcending this pattern already, and here it is again. This technique is not working. Some of the thoughts that try to stop you may even seem to be nothing to do with the skills you are learning in this book. You might have a sudden urge to sleep or feel very tired. You may feel restless as you sit down to read this book, or you may have an urge to watch TV or some other distraction. Whilst all these things are okay to do at normal times, it pays to be aware of when these ideas pop up to distract us from some vital spiritual work. We can come to notice when we feel motivated to look at our progress in each mind pattern we have, and then suddenly we feel overcome by sleepiness for seemingly no good reason. So pretty much everyone I've spoken to has had this in my own life as well, where you sit down to look at something, or you sit down to meditate, or to self-inquire, or you're going to watch a satsang that you really feel had something in it for you. And all of a sudden you're just yawning and you can't stay awake, or you can't sit still, or your phone rings, or something happens to pull you away, whether it's a external or internal thing. It's really a manifestation of this subtle energy that's moving to stop us from progressing. If you're aware of it, then you're not going to be at odds with it, and you're going to be able to go around it and not allow it to stop you. The next time the same pattern presents itself, we must congratulate ourselves that it's now time to move ahead yet again. We must notice that we are about to experience even greater peace, love, and joy. If we allow our mind to simply dismiss this as this stuff isn't working, the same mind pattern wouldn't be back if it was working. Then we miss out on one of the greatest spiritual opportunities of our life. It is precisely because it is working that we are being given another chance to go even deeper. Stage 5 is one of the key stages in our work. Stage 1 is where we begin the work, and this stage is where the work gets much quicker, simpler, and easier. In reality, each stage after this is simply an extension of this one, and we could stop the book after this chapter alone. However, each succeeding chapter explains the final process here with more clarity and insight to help us speed the disassembly of the mind. In each previous stage of this book, we are working on the assumption that you are separate, alone in the universe, that you are this body and it is all you are. We are coming from the idea that whatever happens to your body is happening to you, and that when it dies, so will you. Now we will move to a much higher viewpoint and begin to make a huge leap in consciousness. In this stage, we'll work on a vital assumption of the mind that is at the core of all our suffering as a human being. We all believe deep down that we are separate beings. We believe that we are this body and mind, and that is all we are. The belief is so pervasive throughout humans that we usually never stop to question it. If we take a look at how we came to believe this, we can see that it is a normal part of our development. At first, we are the formless awareness, and when a body appears in it, then we can naturally become fascinated with it and how it works. We start to entertain thoughts about what we are and what is mine. We hold on to our body, mind, and emotions as mine. And because of this, we fear the end of the body as being the end of us. Most of us believe so deeply that we are this body, that we are affected by everything that happens in the body and to it. In this stage, we'll look at how to see the truth and how to undo this core assumption. Once we can see that our body is a part of us, as is our mind, then we need not fear the death of the body. Once we know that we are here before and beyond the body, then we can live from a higher place of peace and joy. All of our problems and suffering stem from this belief that we are separate people. We feel so strongly that we are only this body and that we need things from other people to make us happy. The moment we believe we are alone, isolated from others, then we will feel driven to attain whatever we seem to need to feel happy, safe, and secure again. The things we need can be tangible things like money, friends, a good job, etc., or it can be intangible things such as enlightenment, respect, a relationship, and more. All of our interactions with others are affected by what we think we need from them. If we can come to see that we are not separate from others at all, and that we are all expressions of the self, then we will feel complete. We'll know that we need nothing to be happy, peaceful, and content. No matter what occurs in our lives, we will be at peace. The very moment we start to question our mind's main assumption that we are a person, alone in time and space, traveling through this lifetime trying to accumulate as much as possible in the time that we have, we'll begin to feel better. The moment that we start to transcend this belief, we will see all our problems start to disappear. As amazing as it may seem, it is no longer possible to have a problem when you are not a separate being, but are the wholeness itself. So this is, hopefully it's becoming clear, this is a fundamental stage in taking apart our mind. If all of our ideas about doing something, getting something, becoming something, getting rid of something, are being generated from this sense that those are things that I am doing. I'm the one letting go. I'm the one becoming. I'm the one doing. I'm the one waking up even. All of this is going to begin to become a little bit unhinged, in a good way, of course, that we are no longer feeling separate to anything, less and less as we question this stage. If I feel that I'm a separate person and I'm convinced of that, then the symptoms of that belief are going to be need, want, fear, probably anger. Pretty much every negative emotion arises from some belief about myself as a person. And when we've questioned this assumption fully enough and experienced the real truth that I'm not separate from anything, we'll be free of all those states and those drives and those desires. But even before that, even from the very first time we question, is that actually so? Even though I've believed it my entire existence, is it really true that I'm separate to anything else? Even though it looks like it, even though it feels like it, I begin to feel better immediately. Transcending the false ideas at this stage. Here are the false ideas here. I am a separate person. I am me. I am this mind and body and nothing else. Everything that happens to the mind and the body are happening to me. So if I deeply feel that this is all I am, then my attention is going to be constantly fixated here. And what's happening here is going to feel like it's happening to me. So if there's any fear arising in the body, it will feel like I'm scared. If there's guilt, it'll feel like I'm not good enough, I'm guilty. You know, there'll be always this identification with whatever is occurring. If some disturbance arises in the body and there was previously peace, I'll feel like I'm disturbed. I'll feel like I'm doing and I'm reaching and I'm becoming. So when we begin to realize we're not separate from anything, then we're kind of lifted into a higher state, which is what our natural state is, where there's an inability to identify with any body in particular, not just the one that you're listening to this from, but a recognition, clearer recognition that I'm looking through all forms and appearing as all these forms. We must simply and consistently begin to question these very deep-rooted and core assumptions about our mind, of our mind. We can do this using the technique we learned in the previous stage of asking, is this really true? Again, we can ask the question and we will experience the answer on many levels. If we ask ourselves, is it really true that I'm a separate person? We may receive thought answers such as, of course it is true, or of course it isn't true. I know I am the formless awareness connected to all things. If we stop at these answers, we will not experience a healing and wholeness that comes from living as the truth and not simply believing in it. So even though my mind may be able to give me the right answer to this question, is it really true I'm a separate being? Of course you're not. It's not the same as experiencing what I actually am. And to do that, we must stay open to these answers. For too long, we've allowed our mind to give us our information. It's been our go-to reference source. And it's not that it's wrong, it's just it cannot perceive what you really are. It can only think about it. So if I accept a mind answer to this question, I'm going to still be being someone who's thinking, listening to mind. We must learn to ask the question, but to embrace and welcome a lifetime of experiencing the answers to these most vital questions. You will receive many answers, and an infinite supply is possible. These will come in the form of thoughts, emotions, sensations, epiphanies, revelations, and shifts to a higher level of consciousness, joy, and a sense of freedom, and much, much more. Make it a commitment to your life to make it a living exploration of these questions, and if they're true, and you will experience a life that you could have only dreamt of. And it starts right now. Self-inquiry. This is a vitally important tool which is extremely simple. It's used to undo assumptions and has been described in some detail in a previous chapter, although it was not called by this name. Self-inquiry is simply that we actually look to see if something is true, rather than presuming it is and continuing the mind's assumption about it. In this case, we are actually looking, searching or scanning ourselves to see if we can find evidence that we are a separate being. So when we entertain this idea that I'm just me, I am this being, I'm separate to everything else. From my own experience, I remember it had never once occurred to me to question where that, to try to find that separate being. It was just taken for granted at one point in my existence, and then never ever questioned again. And I remember realizing that if I was a separate being, then I should be able to find myself as a separate being. And when I actually looked, I found a body and some thoughts and some emotions, but there wasn't anything that I could call a separate being. There was definitely something present. It wasn't what I expected at all, but it was a startling discovery that this legendary me that we all believe ourselves to be is not, you cannot find it. It's just not there. So it's vital self-inquiry to actually look. And again, you may find your body, your thoughts, all of that. But is there actually a being called Helen when I look? No, there isn't. There's just this formless awareness that is everywhere and nowhere in particular. So it's a really different experience, self-inquiry, to actually look, and to not find is the success that we've been looking for. When we simply go along with the assumption that we are separate from everything else, we are adding to an energetic mass of tension within ourselves that has gathered over the years and lifetimes that makes it harder to see the truth, or to want to see truth even. However, when we stop and actually try to find out what we are, it's beginning to undo this mass of tangled energy. We are breaking free from any confines that we may have that stop us experiencing happiness and peace. Each time we actually search for this separate me that we think we are, Instead of just assuming it is correct, we are going to feel better and better. At first, it can be unnerving to realize we are not what we thought we are. But if we can persist in this looking, searching, or scanning, we'll consistently find that there is no separate person. Over time, and with a willingness to see, we'll come to a deep and profound realization that we have never been separate from anything or anyone, and this will allow us to live a much different life. Life can then begin to show us the evidence of our oneness with all of life. Each time we simply believe this thought that we are separate, isolated, or alone, we will immediately experience the result of this thought. And we'll have endless problems with other people, things we seem to need, and life not satisfying our desires. We must choose to check and actually see if we can find a separate person each time we assume it is there, in order to undo this assumption and be free. So it was a simple choice in the end for me. I'm either going to keep perpetuating the sense of being someone, or I'm going to make a decision to look and see every time I felt something was happening to myself here, only me, to actually look and see if I could find that being that this is happening to. So whenever I felt I was scared, or I was struggling or suffering or needing, not getting, wanting, all of this, there was an inner decision that happened. And then at first, like everyone, it was inconsistent. I did some inquiry and then I stopped and then wandered away and then came back again. But if you've reached that inner decision within yourself, you'll know, because there will be commitment to look. And as paradoxical as it may seem, that to look and not find anyone that you can call a separate being, every single time the same answer of not finding what you thought you were going to find is actually the way to freedom, to live consciously as what you are. We've all been taught that to get the right answer is going to lead to success, but here, to not find was actually the basis of success for all of us. Every single human being on this planet that has not already completed this process is convinced they are separate, unique, and individual, cut off from everything else, and in need of so much to complete themselves and be safe. This is so fundamental a belief in everyone that nobody questions it at all, even though it is the cause of all the suffering in humanity. Now that you know this, you have to make a choice to follow that belief and continue to experience life from that level, or to take a higher, freer path and be willing to look and see if at all you have ever been a person. Each time we look, we confirm more and more that we are not and have never been separate. So every time you look and don't find, you're going to find it really a little bit harder to believe thoughts. And it just accumulates like that. It becomes more and more obvious that I've never been separate, that this fictional me was the greatest work of fiction, the story of I, the story of me. We are more than this mind and body. We are that in which this mind and body appear, and as such, we cannot suffer or die at all. So there are some examples from students that allowed me to include their examples when I was writing this book, people that were working with me at the time. And I'm not going to read all those for the sake of time, but it gives an example. We've taken the same 4 or 5 students, changed their names, and allowed them to work this pattern all the way back through to the end point, just to sort of illustrate how it actually happens in our progress. So the conclusion to this chapter: at this part of our journey, we'll begin to gain huge benefits from the work we have done so far. It'll become easier and faster, because whenever we reach a particular stage with any mind pattern, we will be working on all our mind patterns simultaneously. All of our mind's noise is being generated from this one belief. That may sound too simple to be true, but we can verify this if we are willing to look a little deeper. Each time we say, I need, or I don't have, or I want, we'll see that it involves this central character in our lives that we believe to be very real and solid. Even when we have a problem with another person, rather than ourselves, that person is still affecting me or my life. If we can digest this deeply within our being, we'll come to see that all our issues can be resolved by this master key that we have been given in this stage. We'll feel as though we have been working one particular mind pattern all the way back to here and stripping it back to its most basic roots. But if we are open to see, we will realize most profoundly that even in stage 1, we were actually working on this stage. So it goes right back to what I said at the start. If stage 1 is the idea that I can change my outside world to feel better, to get what I want. And that again is dependent on this idea that I am a separate being here trying to make these changes. There has only ever been one problem in our lives. There has only ever been one issue to resolve. All other seeming problems are simply this one dressed up to look like something else and to throw you off the path. Recall back in the first stages of this process how we learned that our mind does not like to change anything because it fears our destruction. Notice that it tried to camouflage this main belief in as many different ways as it can. Now we can see that these are simply ways to spend time fixing endless problems that our mind will simply make more of for this me to have them. It is an endless cycle. The quick and easy way out is to work at the root and fix all issues at once. So if I've come to really deeply see I'm not a separate being, never was, automatically in that deep seeing, it gives you a total and utter and absolute immunity to anything that your mind can say. It's bulletproof. It's just a state in which you are bulletproof to anything that happens in your world, in your mind, in your emotions. And it doesn't make you cold. It just means that you cannot suffer. You cannot believe your mind ever again from deeply questioning this stage. It really is this easy and simple. What takes time is to come to see this profoundly and to learn to stay focused here and not be diverted again. So chapter 10 is stage 6, the belief in otherness. So as we said before, we are going to describe in these next 2 chapters, we're going to take what we've just learned deeper and to hopefully allow this process to quicken and to undo this one root belief that is at the core of all of our suffering. In this stage, we're going to look deeper into what it means to be formless. For many of us, we may have used self-inquiry to effectively eliminate any tendencies to think of ourselves still as a thing, an object, or a someone. We may have come to understand that we are formless and beyond being damaged, ageless, and timeless, but we may not have realized the full implications of what it means to be formless. We can still hold other people, events, and things we seem to need as being other than us. For this stage of the process to be fully understood and assimilated, we must come to see that there is nothing other than us. So there is only the one being, and it's experiencing itself as all of these forms. And in every human body, it can think about itself. And in every human body, it's convinced it's a separate being. But it never really was. It is appearing as all of this. What's the result of that knowing is that there is nothing other than me for me to try to get rid of, to be scared of, to be drawn to. All of that is going to disappear in this belief of otherness. If you are formless and cannot find an end to yourself, then when you look, you must be all that exists. You are the emptiness or nothingness from which all forms arise and are made out of. So that's a simple sentence, 2 simple sentences, but the implication of them are profound. If I am not a thing, if I am formless, intangible, more like space than any object in the space, then where do I stop? Where are my boundaries? How far do I reach? And if I take this all the way, this investigation all the way, then there must be the epiphany at some point. Everywhere, must be everywhere, all the time, never actually capable of just being somewhere and someone. At this point, I could instruct you to stop and deeply contemplate this, and you should. However, this would not eliminate what will happen in the next stage. Let us look closer at what it is in this next stage of disassembly that we are applying to our mind and see if we can understand why. You are the source of all that exists, and you are all that has ever existed, exists right now, and could exist in the future. What you are is the formlessness which contains all possibilities of what may manifest, and all that has manifested into actuality. As you read and apply and comprehend this, you'll come to feel a deep sense of peace, completion, and as if you are living in a place that is involved in the world of people, events, and things, but is also somehow protected and immune to the dramas of the world. Every once in a while, you'll come across something that seems to make you suffer again. But this is not actually what is happening. It's important that you take a moment to read and fully contemplate the following statement. Each time you feel you are suffering again, you must look and find out what it is that's been shown to you. Life is trying to show you what you have left out of your allness. You are all of the unmanifest formlessness and the manifest too. If there is anything that you have left out of that, then you'll feel a sense of division inside yourself, because there will still seem to be me and other. If you are all of it, then there is nothing other than you. Even the body that wrote this book is you. The students quoted in this book are you. Christ is you. We could quote endless examples, but we must come to see that all animate and inanimate things are you. So whenever we perceiving something as other than us, as else, then we're going to feel this core division, and this is the root of all suffering. It doesn't matter whether I feel I'm separate from another being, from God, from the world, from the universe. I'm going to feel the same sense of being divided, and this is what causes us to suffer, because you're really indivisible and everywhere, and there is only you. You think you are all these different other human beings, but it's never been so. And every time there is something that we are still perceiving in our old ways other than me, then this core division will arise again. So this section is just asking us to see that it's really the belief in other that really hurts us when we feel we're a separate being. If I feel I'm a separate being, then everything else that ever exists or will exist, and the formlessness that it arises out of, is other than me. And I've separated myself from the whole universe, which isn't really going to feel very good at all. This book came out of you, written by you, to help you see your allness. You are all of it. We must come to accept all of creation as us, including the highest and lowest acts of humanity, in a non-judgmental and non-personal way. I'm not asking you to take personal responsibility for all that has ever gone wrong in the universe, because if you do, then you have really not understood deeply the previous stage. I'm also not asking you to feel proud of all the positive achievements of the universe so far, because this would also be taking things personally as a separate self. You must come to see that no matter how this formlessness expresses itself, it is you. You are expressing yourself in every conceivable way you can, and you will continue to do so without end. Infinite expressions are possible, and the only thing you can know is that you will never express yourself in the same way twice. So you can come to see that all is you, and you are all of this. If you feel a struggle within you, it's because you're reverting to old thought patterns around a particular person, event, or emotion, and this is causing you to separate yourself from it. Suddenly, there is other than you. Let's look at the false idea in this stage. So the false ideas are, I am formless, but other people, places, events, and things are still real, separate, and there is an end to my formlessness. Everything else is other than me. So that may be, we may never have that thought consciously. We may be actually having the thought, I know what I am, I've discovered my formlessness. But if we're still reacting to people, places, things like that, then they are still being perceived as other than me, outside of me, separate to me. And the second idea is, the manifest is different to the unmanifest, and I am unmanifest. The manifest forms in the universe are other than me. The second false belief may not immediately be noticeable, but we will all have a tendency to define ourselves, and the moment we define what we are, we automatically exclude anything that does not fit in with that definition. If we know that we want the security of knowing what we are, then we can begin to cease defining ourselves in thought, image, or ideas. Words such as unmanifest or manifest suggest mental images that our mind can hold on to. There truly is no word to describe what you are. The best our mind can do is to try to combine manifest and unmanifest and imagine what that looks like. You'll know that this second belief has been transcended when you no longer see something as manifest. You no longer notice the coming and going of things. It all begins to feel the same, with no separate witness watching the play of the manifest world. Our role here is now to take an inventory of our life and to notice where we are still holding things as other. It may be a certain person that we go into a divided state with, or a lack of something such as money. When we go into division, and instead of being the one formlessness, we feel we are one and the money, time or peace or whatever it is we feel we need. There is immediately two things. So here, if I'm just peaceful, then there is only me in my experience. And then suddenly there seems to be a lack of something that I need. My experience is suggesting there's something I need. And if I buy that suggestion, then I'm going to feel divided between myself and the thing that I need, or the thing that I want to get rid of. There is immediately two things, us and what we need. And so in effect, we are saying, I am all things except this thing that I need. If we had already included it in our oneness, then we would not feel we need it, nor would we notice a lack of it in our experience. So this is key really here, that if I feel I need something, then the way for me my body to get what it needs is to not perceive it as outside or separate to me. Then I will not have any energetic boundaries between the actual division between me and it is what's repelling it, not allowing it to come into my experience. Our life will be showing us if we are willing to see what needs to be taken into and included into our wholeness. We must be willing to see what we are unconsciously excluding to be able to stay as the truth of who we are. If we're not willing to see, we will fall asleep again and live as if we were separate and begin to suffer. Formlessness has no boundary, no end point, and it must go on forever. You must go on forever. You are infinite and all-pervading, and so therefore nothing can exist that is other than you. Okay. So the conclusion for this chapter. This stage of the process is really an extension of the previous stage and is really asking you to make a decision to live from the truth that you have seen yourself to be. If we continue to interact with life from the viewpoint of being a separate person, interacting and reacting with others, then we will come to see that we are living in a very small way. It is our chance now to live from the fullness of all that is possible for us, to move about through our life knowing that no matter what happens or who we meet for the rest of our lives, we will be meeting ourselves. It is a very different way to live from this truth and as this truth, but it is profoundly rewarding, and much more practically, it helps us to navigate through all of life with its challenges and unexpected changes. So the last stage is stage 7, the belief in becoming the allness. This stage may seem irrelevant or difficult to understand, or it may seem as if your mind can't grasp what's being said. But all I'm really doing is giving you some information so that when the time comes, whether that's 5 seconds from now or 2 years from now, you'll have the information that you need. And basically, to summarize in one sentence, you are not becoming the allness, you already are it. So this stage is simple to understand, but may need some time for the impact of it to fully blossom in your consciousness. Now, it's simple for you to understand if you don't try to get it. Your mind will never understand this, and it's not supposed to. So as I'm reading this, if there's some confusion in your mind, just notice that and recognize that's normal and natural, that your mind is just not capable of understanding. It doesn't mean the information isn't working. Once we have seen deeply that we are the formless awareness and that everything else is too, then our outlook of life begins to change. We may find that we are less and less tolerant of the places in our life that we are still seeing from illusion. We may find that we seem to oscillate between knowing we are formless presence and the other extreme of feeling like we are separate being. We may set about eradicating those areas of illusion from our life, and we may feel that we are making progress for a while. Most of us will come to see, though, that the things we thought we had transcended, even at this level, come back again, and we seem to suffer. To transcend this stage, we must come to see that we are not actually transcending the separate sense at all. That is what our mind will want us to believe, but we must continue to be the truth. There never was any separate being called me, and as such, there is no work to do in order to eliminate this separate person. It is an illusion that has no existence in reality. What we have called the separate me is simply a collection of thoughts about being a separate person. When these thoughts are believed, we have the experience of being someone. The last place that this separate sense of self will seem to hide is as someone who is transcending separateness more and more and more, and spending less and less time in illusion. We could come to believe quite easily that we're making progress, that we are evolving into living as the truth more. We can feel like we are eradicating the sense of being someone and only being the self. The self is all that ever was, is, and will be. There never was any false personal self. You have never been separate. Any belief that it takes time to rid yourself of illusion is simply not true. It takes no time for light to illuminate the darkness when you switch on the light. Illusion is not real. It has never existed and therefore takes no time at all to get rid of. We'll understand this more when we look at the false idea in this stage. False idea 1. I have to get rid of all that is untrue within my being. I must transcend wherever I am still believing in separateness. False idea 2. It takes time to fully live as the truth. I may have seen what I am clearly, but to live as that in all areas of my life takes time. I can do something that will make the separateness go away. So again, this is a subtle one, and it hid in me for quite some time before I discovered it. And again, if you're not consciously understanding this section, it's still going to have an effect. The information is still going to be there when you need it. We must be sure to remind ourselves that there is no work to do now from this place. It's only a matter of seeing, of vigilance from this point. Our mind will try to find a way to activate a new sense of a separate someone. And so we'll need to watch we are not allowing that on some level. If there is time needed in this stage, it's because we must remind ourselves that separateness was never true until it is no longer necessary. So what's experienced is a gradual unfolding, a gradual coming out of illusion, and at some point no longer being able to believe in illusion. That particular stage is also not real. So when do we wake up? Is it gradually or is it suddenly? Well, it's both actually. And we'll have the feeling that we're coming out of the dream. But even that is part of the dream. You'll see in the end that you're awake, you're always awake, and you've never actually been asleep. That only occurred in thoughts. Again, don't try to understand this, just allow it to go in, and it'll do what it needs to do inside you, this information. It will be easy to see where we are still believing in time and having to transcend something, because that area of our life will not be flowing as well as the others. Finally, we'll come to see there is no time, no process, no transcendence or letting go of anything. There is no need for practice to stay as the self, as all is the self. Now, if you are still at the stage where there is a need to stay as a self, then that is because there is still a sense of doing something. So instruction will begin from a teacher to stay as the self, or a certain form of practice or meditation or inquiry. And that is really only until this particular section comes alive within you, and there's a recognition that you've never done any practice or work. So it's one of those areas where teaching always seems paradoxical, and contradicting myself in every sentence. There is only the allness that encompasses all illusion too. It is all the self. At this point, the remainder of the dysfunctional mind will lose its grip, and there will be great peace, love, and joy. So we'll just go to the conclusion of this section. Each mind pattern that you notice can now be seen as a key to total freedom and an end to suffering. You have been given a chance each time you suffer to use it and turn it around into total transcendence. As we have said before, each time you peel back another layer of the mind, you gain more of your energy and spiritual power to speed the rest of the process. It need not take that long to come to silence, stillness, and peace if you're committed to the process. All the tools you need are here. And now that you are reaching the end of this book, I would urge you to take a moment and make a list of the mind patterns you are aware that you still have, and identify which stage you feel you are on each one. Be aware that you may be at stage 1 with some of them and also at an advanced place with another one. There is no rule that says you must be on stage 3 with all the mind patterns you have. There'll be some that are hard to spot and understand, and perhaps if we did not have the trigger events still going on in our lives, we may not see that we are still believing in separation somewhere. All of us have patterns that are easy to see, and we all have some that are quite well hidden also. This is normal, and it does not mean that you are not making progress. At any time you reach the final stage with any pattern, you may feel an urge to stop working on all the other ones and simply focus your attention on the fact that separation was never true, and that there is nothing that can harm you, nothing that you may need, and nothing that can ever cause you to die, because you are formless and immortal. There is no correct way to transcend the mind that works for all of us, but there is the correct way for you. Go with your instinct and ask for help. There are many teachers that will help to point the way, and I am here to help you too. Prayer and contemplation help us to see where we are missing vital pieces of information. Help will come to you from many sources when you need it. One final note. At each stage of this journey, you will feel more peace, love, and joy. There is no rule that says you must completely transcend the mind. If you want to stop at any point, then that is for you to decide. This book is written as guidance for those whose heart will not allow them to rest until they have absolute freedom from mind and suffering is no longer possible. However, you will feel what is right for you. Go as far as you want to go. Just be sure you have not stopped because mind is distracting you. I wish you many blessings and peace. Enjoy the journey, and always remember you are already free. Liberation is already what you are. Okay. So I will open it up for questions if anybody wants to share or to ask a question about that or anything in particular along the pathway. Then click on participants and click to raise your hand, and it'll show me that you want to ask a question. I'll come to you, Caroline, in just a moment. Next week, I'm going to be reading the Empowerment Courses Handbook, which it's a collective works of 3 mini courses that I used to run, and it includes the forgiveness course, which forgiveness for me was a pathway to awakening in itself if we follow it all the way back. There's the Transcending Vasanas course, which I'm not going to read because it's a shortened version of Transcending the Mind book. And then the Abundance, Manifestation and Desire course. So we may not get through all of that in one session, but we'll give it a go, we'll see. Okay, so Caroline, would you like to ask a question?
Can you hear me, Helen?
I can, yes.
Oh, is that quite good?
Good, good.
Is it? Oh, that's brilliant. I fixed my laptop.
Fantastic.
There's something missing. There's something that couldn't have been more perfect than what you've read today. There's something being left out because at times there's a sense of being a separate person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a bit stuck with it. I don't know where it is, but there's a sense of some mind coming back.
Yeah.
And that's fine. The thoughts are fine. They can come back. But there's a sufferer going on. There's somebody there. It's just started in the last 2 days. So something's been revealed to me that I know I have to look at, but I'm at a loss to know what it is.
So when you've had a seeing that you're not a separate being, that has to take root everywhere so that you can no longer perceive from that separation at all. And for the purpose of suffering, it doesn't matter whether you feel separate to just one other being, you know, or separate to the rest of the entire universe. It's that core division that we were talking about. Yeah. That you are so whole and undivided and pure as the self, that to entertain any sense of being divided is painful. So if you can see that there must be some belief in otherness, I think you maybe even said it as you were starting to talk, then it can simply be enough to ask the question, is it really true I'm separate from anything?
Yeah.
Or even the basic question, what am I? Because the only reason that the suffering is starting to come back is because there's still a slight tendency to define ourselves as being perhaps the formlessness, or if I define myself as being all of this, or everywhere, or nowhere, then these are subtle definitions that we're going to struggle with towards the end of our seeing, you know, because they're still coming from a particular location, a point in time and space, and we're identifying with that. How do you know that there has to be, it's going to sound really strange, I'm just going to say it. How do you know that you're suffering? Really, it's only because attention's gone back to one body and mind. You know, if the allness and the everywhereness that you are has seen itself clearly, then there won't be any ability to focus on one body and mind really left anymore after that. And to make a decision about yourself from that. So to say mind is coming back, that's normal assumption. But which mind in which body? Which one are you referring to out of all the 7.5 billion that is you? Obviously, I'm going a little further with this just to kind of illustrate.
That's fine, because it I don't know how to describe it really.
If you ask the question right now inside yourself, is it really true I'm separate from anything? Then you'll feel the division disappear. You'll feel it. It's only an imagination because you never divided from anything. But can you feel it?
I can feel it, yeah. I can feel it. It's a bit crazy. It's something as simple as needing to buy a new laptop, which I don't need to do now. And I could feel mind. I could watch the thoughts of it becoming slightly addictive in the search. And it just sort of went. And I felt a bit overpowered by it. Even though I was watching, and then I was becoming the witness all the time. I wondered if that was creating some division.
Yeah, it's not really about buying something or about the laptop, is it now? It's about the sense of otherness, that there's something other than me that I can get, or that I can need, or that I can want. And that becomes where you have to kind of, when these patterns, you have to deal with them at this level then. That can I want anything or need anything or need to get rid of anything if there isn't anything other than me? The actual word other means separate, doesn't it? Not you. And that causes so much pain inside, because more and more you're living from an undivided place. Not just undivided, but indivisible, not divisible.
Yeah.
Can you separate the space in the room that you're sitting in?
No.
Could you get a pair of scissors or a saw and cut it in the middle?
No.
We're trying to do this in our imagination with ourselves and wondering why it hurts.
Yeah.
So any time now that any suffering arises, it's from this sense of otherness.
Yeah.
And you can address it with that simple question: am I really separate to anything at all? It doesn't matter what it is I feel I'm separate from, even in terms of simplicity. It's this root idea, isn't it, that comes from separation.
Yeah, and I focused on that yesterday and it all dissolved. It just went,
It's just it's a very well-formed habit to perceive ourselves as separate to things, and it will pop up in quite a few places. And we just have to question every time it comes up.
There was an acceptance and allowance of it as well, so that I wasn't trying to resist anything, but I could feel, even though I was doing that, even though that was happening, I was accepting and allowing all this, that there was a little something that wasn't happy with it. There was just a little something banging away.
There seems to be-ness of duality. Duality isn't actually ever real, but it seems to be. So can you accept that you're not separate from anything at all, but you still may seem to need to buy a new laptop?
Yeah.
Or you still may seem to need to get rid of a headache or something. It just seems to be. It can be allowed to play. Then your body might go to a shop and buy a laptop, but without any sense of need or separateness.
Yeah, and I absolutely. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit, but it should be okay.
I'll stop the video. I'll stop.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely get all that. And it was fine. And it is fine. It was just, I was a bit surprised, and it still surprises me that the patterns and the beliefs, this sense of the belief that there's a laptop and I have to buy it and it can cause some suffering, the sense that can still affect me, or it can't, but
it became very clear to me at this point that It was only ever this one habit to imagine that there was something other than me, and that habit, it's the same thing no matter what we're perceiving as other. That's the root of it, isn't it? And it's very hypnotic to dream that there is all this other stuff. And for some time, your work will be just to stay at this simple place. Whenever I feel I'm suffering, I'm perceiving something as separate to me, other than me. And that'll dissolve desire then, and need, and even the need to stay as the undivided place. You see, all of that is a symptom that is other than me. The real self is other than me, and I'm getting there, which is that final stage, you know, that we read about in the last bit. So keep it simple as that. Keep your attention is just like in this tiny little one idea that there's something other than me. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Helen.
You're very welcome. Good question. Lovely. Lopo?
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
Hi. I want to thank you. Well, I just thank you anyways, but thank you for the PDF yesterday that you sent out. And like I was thinking, and I was thinking about the things that I've done within my active using, and I know that's past, but I'm unsure of like how I was the self and things like that, but I still acted out in those ways, and may still act out in those ways, maybe not as detrimental to other people, but still in those sort of ways. I don't really know what my question is. Yeah, I believe it. I absolutely, well, I think I believe it. Yeah.
I totally get what you're saying. It's we as I was just saying to Caroline, the tendency to imagine ourselves as being a separate being is so pervasive. All of humanity is doing it. Nobody questions it ever. So it kind of stands to reason it's going to take a little the very first time you see it, it'll begin to affect your mind and body. It'll begin to reflect in your mind and body that you're not separate, and your behaviors and your patterns, your mind and everything will begin to reflect that. But it will take some repetition and seeing again and again and again until it's kind of completely saturated your body, mind, and then it'll want to saturate your relationships and everything. You know, so it's the paradox of being already that you were never separate, but at the same time it's a gradual unfolding in your mind and body as your life. So your behaviors, your actions, all of our behaviors are coming from our level of consciousness, what we feel ourselves to be. And so if there has been a deep and profound realization that I'm not separate to anything, then I'll be interacting with everything as if it is my own self. But that will take some time to seem to unfold. Yeah. You know, and there's a natural respect for all of life and all of its experience, you know, including your own body, mind. You know, and you'll be able to treat it kinder, perhaps give it more love, and all of this. But it's just that repetition, like any habit. We've been in this habit for so long, hasn't it, to think of ourselves as separate to everything, and alone, and perhaps deep down really, really scared of dying or ceasing to exist. And so it just needs repetition, really, to really, if you look at every time something arises in your mind or your body that you would rather not feel or say or do, you know, we all have those, why on earth did I do that? It's just, we can just look at it as another call to just look again, to see again that we're not separate. And that's the way I kind of looked at it. Otherwise it may feel, oh, I'm never going to get there. I mean, you notice things changing within your own life as you see it clearer, and paradoxically that makes you want to get there faster. But it does speed up, but it's just a matter of who knows how many times we've reminded ourselves that we're a separate being. Every time we believe a thought, we're reminding ourselves. So just need some repetition to kind of turn that around.
Yeah, I have like really had some really small like bits of seeing and practicing. And within the practicing, things have happened, you know, and it's been wonderful. And I've started to, started to notice or be aware of you know, certain like stillness or silence a lot more regularly, and it's been really, really, really good. So it's just like you say, it's the process.
And of course, the desire is going to arise from that, to want to feel like that all the time, to want to look from that place all the time. It's natural. And if it wasn't arising, you know, I'd be wondering why. But just don't let your mind grab it. Oh, this is going to take ages to fully get this done, you know, because it puts you back in time, and it puts you back as someone doing it. You're the self already. You're already the one. You're just coming to see that clearer and clearer and clearer. You know, so you're not trying to get anywhere with this. That's the thing. Mind will try to make a process out of it.
Yeah.
And then tell you you're never going to get there. You know, so it's a sneaky one. Lovely. Good question. Thanks. Joanne?
Hiya.
Hiya, how are you?
Not bad.
Good, good.
I'm at the stage where I'm under the assumption that I'm a mother of a daughter who has epilepsy and regularly hurts herself and is in hospital with head injuries and things. I've got a lot of fear around even looking at that and thinking about my daughter. I'm just wondering how I go about. I realise it's me creating the suffering when I think about her. As I was sat here listening to you, actually, I thought, I'm suffering because I'm thinking about it. How do I look at that?
Firstly, it was the one place in my own life where I really struggled, you know, for kids, and there was a real resistance to realizing I've never been that person I thought I was. But the way I got around that was by realizing I've never been that person I thought I was. So I've never been just their mum, you know, and they've never been just my children. But the self is playing those roles, and in fact, it's because we love our children so much that there is any fear around sort of letting go of that belief in this area, you know. So it's natural, and we'll all feel one area of our life, or at least, you know, maybe more than one area where mind goes, whoa, it's not, I'm not so sure we should let go of this idea here, you know, what's going to happen if I let go of it. And that's a valid thing for us to consider if you were a separate being and then you're going to become the self. But all you're doing is seeing how it's always been. So nothing will change in terms of your ability to be a good parent. And you'll probably care even more deeply, if that's even possible, for our children, you know. So you'll be in a clearer place. There won't be this noise around being a mother going on constantly, and the mothering can come from a clearer place of peace. And instead of it being like mine says, that I'm going to care less, I'm going to forget about them if I don't see them as separate to me. It's actually exactly the opposite, in that you're just totally present to whatever is needed in that moment, without the, what should I do? Should I, you know, all that stuff that goes on when a crisis happens for a being who believes they're separate. There's once you've transcended these ideas, there's a clear space of your being in which the highest action available in any moment automatically comes out of you, because your clarity and your focus isn't tied up with these thoughts. Can you get a sense of it?
Yeah.
It's mind's clever way of trying to delay our awakening, because it says, might not be a good idea. And it's all right with your boss, you know, but not with your kids, because, you know, you might not care for them anymore. But it's actually completely the opposite. You actually fall. There's a deeper love that's possible that is before any separation. You care for everything as if it is your own self, because it is. But the self will still play the same roles. It'll still be a sister or a wife or a mother, or, you know, whatever role it's playing in and as our life. And it can do that so much more efficiently, effectively, without wasting energy, you know, sort of struggling to get away from thoughts. And, you know, sometimes those moments where you really need to take some action, you feel paralyzed, you don't know what to do. Imagine those moments where it's just clear and obvious how to move forward and how to love. Love will just arise naturally out of you from that place. Does that help?
Yeah, but I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's fine.
At the stage I'm at, how do I cope with the thoughts? Do I just question the thoughts when they arise about this vulnerable daughter? What practical thoughts what do I do?
If you look at the meanings behind events that they have inside of you, and of course don't need to tell us now, but if something happens, for example, like you said with your daughter, what does it mean inside you? And for me, there was meanings. The reason these thoughts were prevailing were because it would be suggested to me that I wasn't a good enough person, or I wasn't a good enough mother, or, you know, all these different meanings. And then just question, are they really true, those meanings? So when something happens, what does it make you think and feel about yourself? And is that so? Is that really is automatic an assumption that we go along with? If this thing wouldn't be happening if, you know, it is kind of a sense that there are some meanings attached to it inside us. Can you get a sense that there might be some of those in you about all of this?
Yeah, it's there's a sense that I can't protect her.
Yeah.
And that if anything really bad happened to her, I wouldn't be able to cope with those overwhelming grief feelings.
Yeah. So what you can do, and it's not something that a lot of us really feel a pull to, but it may be applicable. I did it myself many times, is to look at the worst case scenario and what would that mean for me? And is it true? So is it really true that I can't protect her? Is it really true that I wouldn't be able to cope? You know, and really sit with a cup of tea and a pencil and, you know, pen and paper or whatever, and just jot down any sort of insights that come. Because if we just agree with those thoughts, then they're going to keep being generated by our mind. And we're going to keep being scared of something that may not actually ever occur, but our mind is talking about it constantly. You know, so is it really true that I can't cope? I wouldn't be able to cope, you know? And then either way, whether the worst happens or it doesn't, you'll be in a clear place to be able to deal with it. You know, that's the main thing. But because you are the self already, even though you're perhaps not consciously living as that yet, this contemplation that you do, this questioning, is going to begin to affect everyone around you and lift them to a higher place as well. And you might have to go through the same set of circumstances, but you'll both be in a very different place emotionally, and your relationship can deepen through these challenges even more. So you can look at what is suggested to you by mind, and don't just automatically accept them. And I really want to know actually if that's true. You know, is that really it's like mind is trying to see where we doubt, isn't it, and suggesting to us where we're doubting ourselves. But you don't have to just take that. You can question, and you begin to feel better even just questioning. And there'll be a growing sense of conviction the more you ask this question, is that true? Actually, I could cope with anything, you know. I may not obviously choose to go through anything, but there'll be a growing sense of a deepening courage and conviction that come from the real self. So okay. Have a cup of tea and get a pen and paper and see what comes up, and you can always get deeper with these questions, you know.
I'll do that today. Thank you.
Lovely. Good stuff. Thank you. Vidya?
Namaste, Helen.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, so my question is, you're talking about stages.
Yeah.
Can you just, because I really liked the stage 7 or that you were talking about, really, is there any progress? Is there anything? And I just got so excited about it. Can you just jump straight to that? So I just want to come from that standpoint all the time. And you know, that everything is myself. So I refuse to absolutely believe anything, even if there appears to be others, but to really see them as myself. And how do you do that without, you know, the mind tricking you? Or is it just to really refuse to accept anything other than everything is as self? Because I know you said that in the next moment you get to experience, in the writings you had earlier, is you experience the nominant. So I don't want it to be another belief, but to actually stand from that point. So there's absolutely everything obliterated. Just to stand naked in that, just being. That's really, really what I want.
I would suggest, like we were saying earlier to Caroline, just asking that question: is it really true? Excuse me, that I'm separate from anything, and making your life. I know you already are doing, but just to answer the question, making your life a question, because if you're asking any question at all with a curiosity and a wish to see the answer, you're not going to be able to get caught up in illusion for more than a couple of seconds, because immediately that openness feels closed again, and you feel it as some negative emotion. It's really the vibrational frequency of the body mind that's dropped in that moment, which we feel as a negative emotion, but you'll pick it up immediately. Can you get a sense of, you know, we're either living from a question or we're living from an assumption, and there's nothing in between. And all these final beliefs that it's going to take time and all of that to live as the one, and all you can ever really control is, am I living from that undivided place now? You know, and the fastest way I've ever found to make sure that I'm not is to live as a question, to remind myself, what am I? And then everything that happens in my experience is the answer to that question, and it's continuous and it's ongoing and it's unfolding. So it's not sorry, go ahead.
So just don't identify with everything that appears as that answer, to not see it as separate again.
Yeah, there'll just be a kind of, it's an ongoing movie, isn't it? Oh, I am this emotion right now, and I am that person, and I am this frustration, and I am that sense of being late for my appointment, and I am this person I'm talking to on the phone. You know, it'll just be everything that happens will be an answer to that question forever, basically, you know, ad infinitum. But you're not looking for any particular answer, or you're open to every single way that life can answer that question, what really am I? Because then you won't ever be able to, the only reason we suffer is because we identify, we have a self-definition of a thought. Even if that thought is I am the infinite one, it's still going to feel limited after a while. You know, I don't want to know what I am. I'd rather find out. Is kind of the best place to be energetically. So there's kind of a freedom in sort of living from a question, but not never needing an answer or the answer, or enjoying all the answers. They're kind of the same thing, aren't they?
Yeah, so just being in that and in silence, you know, they talk about just to be silent. So so you find that really, really important, to just be as quiet as you can, silent as you can.
I'm already silent. I've always been silent. Same for everyone. And in that silence, you can hear all the answers that are coming. You can perceive all the answers, can't you? You know, and it's kind of the paradox of absolutely already being that completely, and also at the same time never ever being able to find out completely what you are. You know, and always having life answer that question in different ways, new and exciting ways. That quietness is natural to our being. That's why we can hear thoughts or, you know, perceive these experiences, because they're going on in contrast. They're moving and changing in contrast to what you really are, which is the stillness and the silent peace. So the silence will be a lived experience when there's no tendency to define yourself anymore, or less and less. You know, something wants to. Of course, you're going to want to grab a hold of a nice epiphany where there's just a profound revelation, and now I've got it now. That's it now. I'm sorted. You know, did that several thousand times, and then you start to suffer again after a while. You know, so okay, I just don't want to know. You know, I'll enjoy the revelations when they come, but I'm not going to cling on to anything, any concept.
Yeah, the only today I had to ring and talk with somebody, and there's such a difference in my being, and I don't know how that, you know, where along since I met you, and doing the dissolving of the ego course and focusing on your satsangs, is that I don't know how or where that changed, but I notice all my relationships, and there's just something so light and so different and so loving, and I don't know how it got to that, or
I've still no idea when it happened. You know, I always thought there'd be this big moment that is very, very noticeable, but suddenly at some point you just can't identify with thoughts anymore. And when that happened, nobody knows and nobody cares actually afterwards. It's, you know, it's so just maybe I can't do that anymore.
So maybe it's I've always been that, but everything else that was covering it fell away, is falling away, and just revealing what's always been there.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. I think Adyashanti said it's a destructive process, and it is in a way, because it's destroying all our ideas about ourselves, even the profound ideas, you know, even the ones we think are really true. So yeah, that's good. Wonderful. Thank you for asking and sharing.
Thank you.
Ronald, last but not least.
Thank you. Just something that I'm just curious about your thoughts. These words, holy, divine, worship, that kind of center around God. Prayer, even. I mean, if there's only one, I mean, in a sense, am I praying to myself? Is consciousness worshiping consciousness? Is that just part of the illusion? The play of consciousness? It almost seems like a kind of a subtle form of separation, but I'm just curious about your thoughts.
It's at first it seems like I'm praying to some other power, some other being, and then there's a revelation that there is only the one being. Whenever that happens, that revelation, and then there's a recognition I'm kind of praying to myself, which sounds a weird thing to say, but you know, that is how it's always been. We were never separate to anything, and we're just coming to see that clearly. And there is, you can really not see it. Eventually you won't see a difference between meditation or prayer or self-inquiry, contemplation, because they're all ways of consciously being the one. You know, consciously, you are the one already, but consciously being that, whether we call it prayer or whatever name we're using for it, to meditate on the self, to be the awareness, consciousness recognizing itself. It's really all the same thing, isn't it, in the end? That the one is, there's such joy in it when it recognizes itself, and that sense of freedom that comes from that, freedom from limitation and lack. And prayer may still occur, may still go on, and it doesn't matter whether, even if I thought I was praying to something outside of myself, I never was in actuality. That may be how it's really experienced and seemed. But there's sometimes just a sense of gratitude and needing to express the joy and the love and the happiness that comes, the peace. It may take the form of prayer, you know, it may take the form of the song or some music, or, you know, all these great works of art come from that space, the music and all of the beauty that we see in the world as well. So it's all a kind of prayer, really, in a way, isn't it, to recognize yourself.
Thank you.
Does that help you?
Yeah, there still seems to be within the humanness this. I mean, we're kind of in a way patting ourselves on the back in one way, appreciating ourselves, you know. But there seems to be along the path almost this word surrender. You know, what is it I'm surrendering to? I'm surrendering to myself. I mean, talk about another paradox.
Yeah.
It's you know, I think it's just maybe it's just one of those paradoxes. I mean, Nisargadatta and others talk about you're divine. I mean,
Yeah.
realize that, you know, worship yourself.
Yeah.
Of course, I never understood that to begin with, and obviously the mind can have a lot of fun with that.
Yes.
But yeah. Okay, thank you.
It really, to me, it was experience more of a surrender of what I am not. You know, sort of a letting go of sort of the vanity of the false ideas about what I am, my insistence on keeping myself a limited being. That was a kind of surrender in that way, that I just didn't want to keep believing those ideas because they were not true. You know, so the surrender is to what is true. I don't want to dream anymore. I want to see what I really am, to be that consciously. That's the kind of surrender, isn't it? Surrender of all the ways I dream about myself as a someone, and to live what's it like to be consciously what you are. So lovely. Thank you. Okay, we'll take Diane's question, last one for today.
Yeah, hi Helen.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yeah. Lovely to meet you.
Very, very happy to meet you. I really just kind of wanted to say hi. And I've been just following your work for maybe the last week. I was introduced to you, and I feel really powerful resonance. And I have been kind of looking at when I can join you, because I'm in California. So with the time difference, it's a little bit confusing.
Wow, early morning, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a fluke that I'm here. My neighbors were being a little loud. So I woke up and then I called the police, and then they quieted down. So I said, never mind.
Well, I'm awake now, yeah, might as well, yeah.
And then I was awake and I thought, oh, yeah, I'm up. Let me just look online. And then here I've accidentally came into your satsang. So.
Fantastic. We have, well, we're on the subject of time. We have a Thursday evening UK time, 7 p.m. UK, which may be more accessible. And we're also starting, the first one is on the 28th of June, a US satsang, because there are a lot of Sangha members coming from the US now that are finding it sort of challenging, especially as the world is kind of getting back to normal. So all the details of that are on the website or on the Facebook page. But I think it's 8 p.m. UK time, which is 3 p.m. Eastern time on the 28th of June. So, and we're going to be doing that probably every other month to start off with, maybe on a Sunday. So hopefully it's more accessible for people that work during the week as well. So.
Okay. And then I do have a practical question about your one-to-one dissolving the ego course. So there's not a lot of information about the scheduling and stuff on the website about that one-to-one. So how can I find out more information about how that works?
Yeah. If you send an email to evolutionofspirit@gmail.com, it's on the website, helenhamilton.org. Send us a contact form there. You can, Maggie will get back to you and sort of answer any questions you have about that. Because it's one of the reasons we do it that way, because of the time scheduling and things like that. So you just send an email to Maggie, she'll get back in touch with you and we'll sort it out from there.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you. Nice meeting you too.
Okay. So we will leave it there for today. And the next satsang is at 7 p.m. Thursday UK time. And thank you all for joining me. Namaste.